Devaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirya. Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. Bhagavati Uttam Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. So continuing with the discussion on Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 22nd, we are starting today. Prithu Maharaja's meeting with the four Kumaras, text number 1 onwards. Maitri Uvacha Janeshu Pragranat Svevam Prithum Prithul Vikramam Tatropa Jagmur Muneyash Chatvara Surya Varchasaha. The great sage Maitreya said, while the citizens were thus praying to the most powerful king Prithu, the four Kumaras, who were as bright as the sun, arrived on the spot. So last chapter we studied how Prithu Maharaj was talking to all the citizens and he was praising them that by your following the Varnashram system or doing your occupational duties, I'll be benefited and you should be doing this. And then the citizens praised him, demigods praised him, sages praised him. And then four Kumaras, it is said, who were as bright as the sun, arrived on the spot. Tastu Siddheshwaran Raja Vyomno Avatarto Archisha Lokan Papan Kurvanan Sanugo Lakshitan. Seeing the glowing effulgence of the four Kumaras, the masters of all mystic power, the king and his associates could recognize them as they descended from the sky. The four Kumaras are described herein as Siddheshwaran, which means master of all mystic power. One who has attained perfection in yoga practice immediately becomes master of the 8 mystic perfections. To become smaller than the smallest, to become lighter than the lightest, to become bigger than the biggest, to achieve anything one desires, to control everything, etc. These four Kumaras or Siddheshwaras had achieved all the yogic perfectional achievements, and as such, they could travel in outer space without machines. While they were coming to Maharaj Prithu from other planets, they did not come by airplane, but personally. And they just flew from one place to another. In other words, these four Kumaras were also spacemen who could travel in space without machines. The residents of the planet known as Siddhaloka can travel in outer space from one planet to another without vehicles. However, the special power of the Kumaras mentioned herewith is that whatever place they went to would immediately become sinless. During the reign of Maharaj Prithu, everything on the surface of this globe was sinless, and therefore the Kumaras decided to see the king. Ordinarily, they do not go to any planet which is sinful. So wonderful qualities of the four Kumaras, and just by their appearance, all the planets, they become sinless. Prabhupada didn't do in the translation, but in the word-to-word translation it is said, Lokan apapan. So they made every place sinless once they appeared at that place. So they were not just the mystic yogis, they were the devotees. That's why they could do that. Tad darshanod gatan pranan pratyadit survo ittitha sasadasya nugo vanya indriyeshu gunanivaha. Seeing the four Kumaras, Prithu Maharaj was greatly anxious to receive them. Therefore the king with all his officers very hastily got up, as anxiously as a conditioned soul whose senses are immediately attracted by the modes of material nature. So this Maitreya Muni also is using some poetic license here. King with all his officers very hastily got up. How? As anxiously as a conditioned soul whose senses are immediately attracted by the modes of material nature. Means just imagine our senses are so conditioned, so materially motivated that as soon as, suppose the eyes, as soon as we see something beautiful, our eyesight or our line of sight will immediately follow that. Immediately. Ears want to hear something beautiful, ears will go towards that sound, even if there's a huge traffic, but ears will look for that sound. So that because these are conditioned senses, conditioned body, conditioned mentality, and this is how hastily or how hurriedly the king and his officers got up, because when they saw four Kumaras, now this was Prithu Maharaj's condition that he wanted to serve the four Kumaras. He wanted to welcome them. He was anxious to receive them. So he did not waste a single second to receive them. Every conditioned soul is influenced by a particular mixture of the modes of material nature. As such, the conditioned soul is attracted to certain types of activity, which he is forced to perform because he is completely under the influence of material nature. Here, Prithu Maharaj is compared to such a conditioned soul, not because he was a conditioned soul, but because he was so anxious to receive the Kumaras that it was as if without them he would have lost his life. This is our situation, our conditioned souls. If we think I didn't see this thing, or I didn't hear that thing, or I didn't taste that thing, my life is finished. There's no point in living. That's us. So the same example is given, that Maharaj Prithu was so anxious to receive the Kumaras that it was as if without them he would have lost his life. The conditioned soul is attracted by the objects of sense gratification. His eyes are attracted to see beautiful things. His ears are attracted to hear some nice music. His nose is attracted to enjoy the aroma of a nice flower. And his tongue is attracted to taste nice food. Similarly, all his other senses, his hands, his legs, his belly, his genitals, his mind, etc., are so susceptible to the attraction of the objects of enjoyment that he cannot restrain himself. Prithu Maharaj, in the same way, could not restrain himself from receiving the four Kumaras, who were bright by dint of their spiritual progress, and thus not only he himself but also his officers and associates all received the four Kumaras. So they were bright by the dint of their spiritual progress. And in the first verse it was said that as if and they were as bright as many suns. As what exactly it says was, who were as bright as the sun. They arrived there. So once somebody makes spiritual progress, now spiritual progress is what? It's not like somebody has to issue us a certificate that we are making progress. Spiritual progress means more attachment to Krishna and less attachment to the material world. Means we are coming in our own constitutional position. We are coming back towards our constitutional position of the soul. Original, natural position. Means from the consciousness of the soul, the material covering is started to go away. So the So the basic nature of the soul, or the basic constitutional position of the soul, is it is spiritual. Spiritual means it's effulgent, just like Krishna is effulgent, and his effulgence is a whole Brahm Jyoti. That's the effulgence of his body. We are part and parcel of Krishna. So the soul is very effulgent, very bright. So one who is spiritually advanced, so this brightness it just shows up. That's why in the pictures, if you see all that incarnations of the Lord, all the spiritually advanced people, they're shown with a halo around their head. And that halo is the effulgence of the soul, and that has shown forth now. And in case of four Kumaras, this was the issue. This was the point, that they were bright as sun. Similarly, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he was in Banaras and he went to meet Prakashanand, Saraswati and the other Brahmins, so Mahaprabhu sat at a place where people would wash their feet, take off their shoes or chappals and wash their feet. And Mahaprabhu just sat over there, and because he's a source of Brahm Jyoti, so from him, he showed from his body the effulgence like millions of suns have arisen simultaneously. So when Prakashan and Saraswati saw that, and he came running to Mahaprabhu, he said, no, this is not the place for you. You please come inside and sit with all of us. So in fact, that was his devotional service, his Akyat Sukriti, and he got the mercy of Mahaprabhu. But the point was, Mahaprabhu, he showed the effulgence of millions of suns from his body. Because that is because he is a supreme personality of Godhead, and he can display that. So one who is spiritually advanced. So this is one of the ways to see if a person is spiritually advanced or not. His face, his countenance will be very effulgent, very soft and very effulgent. Even if his bodily color may be dark or whatever, but it will be glowing, and without the use of any makeup. It could be Prabhuji or Mataji, it doesn't matter. But he would be glowing, or she would be glowing. It is said, birds of a feather flock together. In this world, everyone is attracted by a person of the same category. A drunkard is attracted to persons who are also drunkards. Similarly, a saintly person is attracted by other saintly persons. Prithu Maharaj was in the topmost position of spiritual advancement, and as such he was attracted by the Kumaras who were of the same category. It is said, therefore, that a man is known by his company. So Prithu Maharaj was so anxious to receive and meet four Kumaras because he knew he can get some nice Krishna Katha from them. And this is what Prabhupada is saying, birds of same feather flock together, because they would look forward to that company, that association. And that's what Prabhupada says. It is said, therefore, a man is known by the company he keeps. So this is also true. If you want to know somebody, you find out who does he hang around with. Then we know what kind of person he is. Gaurvadya yantrita sabhya prashayanat kandharaha vivid pujayam chakre grihita dhyahanasanan. When the great sages accepted their reception according to the instructions of the Shastras, and finally took their seats offered by the king, influenced by the glories of the sages, immediately bowed down. Thus he worshipped the four Kumaras. The four Kumaras are Parampara spiritual masters of the Vaishnava Sampradaya. Out of the four Sampradayas, namely Brahm Sampradaya, Shri Sampradaya, Kumar Sampradaya, and Rudra Sampradaya, the disciplic succession of spiritual master to disciple, known as the Kumar Sampradaya, is coming down from the four Kumaras. So Prithu Maharaj was very respectful to the Sampradaya Acharyas. It is said by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Sakshat Dharitvena Samasta Shastra. A spiritual master or the Parampara Acharya should be respected exactly like the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The word Vidhivat is significant in this verse. This means that Prithu Maharaj also strictly followed the instructions of the Shastra in receiving a spiritual master or Acharya of the transcendental disciplic succession. Whenever an Acharya is seen, one should immediately bow down before him. Prithu Maharaj did this properly. Therefore, the words used here are Parashrayanta Kandhara. Out of humility, he bowed down before the Kumaras. And just see, both are Shaktavesh Avatar. Prithu Maharaj has the Shakti of Shasan or ruling, and four Kumaras have the Shakti of knowledge. But Prithu Maharaj, out of his humility and out of respect for the Parampara Acharyas, because they are Brahmins and they are the Acharyas, founder Acharyas of Kumar Sampradaya, and Prithu Maharaj is a king, he is a Kshatriya, so he bowed down. This is his humility and respect for the Brahminical culture. And this is exactly what he was talking in the previous chapter, that if we worship or if we respect the Brahmins and Vaishnavas, Supreme Lord is pleased. Tad pad shoch salilar marjita lak bandana tatra shilavatam vrittam achran manyan eva. After this, the king took the water which had washed the lotus feet of the Kumaras and sprinkled it over his hair. By such respectful actions, a king, as an exemplary personality, showed how to receive a spiritually advanced personality. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has said, Apani Acharya Prabhu Jivera Shikhai. It is very well known that whatever Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu taught in his life as Acharya, he himself practiced. When he was preaching as a devotee, although he was detected by several great personalities to be the incarnation of Krishna, he never agreed to be addressed as an incarnation. Even though one may be an incarnation of Krishna or especially empowered by him, he should not advertise that he is an incarnation. People will automatically accept the real truth in due course of time. Prithu Maharaj was an ideal Vaishnava king. Therefore, he taught others by his personal behavior how to receive and respect saintly persons like the Kumaras. When a saintly person comes to one's home, it is a Vedic custom first to wash his feet with water and then sprinkle this water over the heads of oneself and one's family. Prithu Maharaj did this for he was an exemplary teacher of the people in general. So Prithu Maharaj was showing by his example how to receive spiritually advanced persons. So he washed their lotus feet and then sprinkled the water over his hair, and his family members must have done the same. Hatikasan asinan swadhishneshva pavakan Shraddha Sanyam Samyuktaha Pritaha Praha Bhavagrajan. The four great sages were elder to Lord Shiva, and when they were seated on the golden throne, they appeared just like fire blazing on an altar. Maharaj Prithu, out of his great gentleness and respect for them, began to speak with great restraint as follows. The Kumaras are described herein as the elder brothers of Lord Shiva. When the Kumaras were born out of the body of Lord Brahma, they were requested to get married and increase the population. In the beginning of the creation, there was a great need for population. Therefore, Lord Brahma was creating one son after another and ordering them to increase the population. However, when the Kumaras were requested to do so, they declined. Of course, they were the firstborn. And as soon as they came out, they declined. Brahmaji said, okay, increase the population, get married. But they said, no, we don't want to do that. They wanted to remain brahmachari throughout life and be engaged fully in the devotional service of the Lord. The Kumaras are called Nashtik Brahmachari, meaning they were never to marry. Because of the refusal to marry, Lord Brahma became so angry that his eyes became reddish. From between his eyes, Lord Shiva or Rudra appeared. The mode of anger is consequently known as Rudra. Lord Shiva also has a Sampradaya party known as the Rudra Sampradaya, and they're also known as Vaishnavas. So we know this story. So when four Kumaras appeared, they declined Brahmaji's order. They declined to follow Brahmaji's order. So Brahmaji got so angry. At that time, Lord Shiva or Rudra appeared. And Brahmaji cursed the four Kumaras, may you always remain thus, like little boys, 3 or 4 year old boys. And the Kumaras were happy because at that age, they cannot develop. The body is not developed, the consciousness is not developed for enjoying the opposite sex. So they said, then we can remain brahmacharis like this forever. Prithuruvacha aho acharitam kim me mangalam mangalayana yasya vo darshanam hi asid durdarshanam cha yogibhi. King Prithu spoke, my dear great sages, auspiciousness personified. It is very difficult for even the mystic yogis to see you. Indeed, you are very rarely seen. I do not know what kind of pious activity I performed for you to grace me by appearing before me without difficulty. When something uncommon happens in one's progressive spiritual life, it should be understood to be incurred by agyat sukriti or pious activities beyond one's knowledge. To see personally the Supreme Personality of Godhead or his pure devotee is not an ordinary incident. When such things happen, they should be understood to be caused by previous pious activity as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita. One who is completely freed from all the resultant actions of sinful activities and who is absorbed only in pious activities can engage in devotional service. Although Maharaj Prithu's life was full of pious activities, he was wondering how his audience with the Kumaras happened. He could not imagine what kind of pious activities he had performed. This is a sign of humility on the part of King Prithu, whose life was so full of pious activities that even Lord Vishnu came to see him and predicted that the Kumaras would also come. So Maharaj Prithu's life was full of pious activities, full of devotional service. So much so that in the sacrificial arena we had studied earlier, Lord Vishnu himself came and asked him to ask for benedictions. But now he is saying, it is very difficult for even the mystic yogis to see, and I do not know what kind of pious activity I performed for you to grace me by appearing before me without difficulty. And for Maharaj Prithu to see them and to speak with them, because spiritual personalities like four Kumaras or Narad Muni They cannot be just easily seen by any one of us. Just like in New York, in earlier days of ISKCON, devotees had made arrangement for Prabhupada to speak in an auditorium, and they worked hard to distribute the pamphlets, to advertise, and everything. And when Prabhupada came, there were only few people in the auditorium, maybe 8 or 10 people. And the devotees were they were feeling bad. The Prabhupada had to come all the way, and there were only few people here. And so after the program, they went to Prabhupada and apologized. Prabhupada, we did all we could do, but people didn't come. Only handful of people came. And Prabhupada said, oh, what do you mean? Didn't you see Narad Muni was there? Didn't you see the demigods were there? And the devotees, obviously, we can only imagine their shock. I mean, of course, they didn't see anybody, but Prabhupada could see them. Prabhupada could see. He said Narad Muni himself was there. Demigods were there. So it is our fault or our conditioned eyes. We cannot see, but they are there. Just like it is said, and it has been experienced also, that wherever Ram Katha is spoken, Hanumanji is present there. And the asan is made for Hanumanji, for him to come and take his asan, because Ram Katha is going to go on. So some can say, oh, it's all superstition, it doesn't happen, but it does happen. He comes. This is what he loves to do, to hear Ram Katha. So yes, we have to have faith. Got to have faith. So here Maharaj Prithu is so powerful, so pure, that he not only saw 4 Kumaras, but he is also serving them. He's going to get some instructions from them. So anyway, we'll stop here. See anybody has any questions or comments. Okay, so you all have a safe and wonderful day. Hare Krishna. Jai Shri Ram.